All right, so fellow philosopher, get ready, because we are going on a deep dive. And this time, it's medieval thought.
Ooh, medieval thought.
Yeah, but we're not talking history this time. We're
Oh,
talking a straight-up philosophical puzzle that has thinkers, even today, scratching their heads.
really?
That's called Haecceity.
Haecceity.
Haecceity. And
That's a mouthful.
it is a mouthful, yeah. And it's a really interesting one. And to unpack it, we're going to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Nice.
So this idea was developed by John Duns Scotus, and he was trying to answer this question that seems deceptively simple.
Okay.
What makes this thing, and not something else?
Right. Yeah, that's something that we all kind of just take for granted. Like, I know that this coffee cup is different from that coffee cup over there,
Right.
but like explaining why that is surprisingly difficult.
Yeah.
So imagine you have two perfectly identical spheres.
Okay.
Same size, same material, everything. How are they different?
Yeah, I mean, intuitively, I want to say they are different. But how do I actually articulate that?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that's what's called the problem of individuation.
Okay.
And it's not just about things being different, but what makes them distinct entities.
Gotcha.
And Scotus tackles this with his concept of common natures.
Okay, so common natures.
Yeah.
Could you give me an example?
Yeah, so let's take humanity.
Okay.
Humanity is a nature that is shared by all humans, right?
Right.
And Scotus says that this shared nature is real,
Okay.
but it somehow gets divided into individual people.
Okay, so if humanity is shared, wouldn't that make all of us like the same person?
Exactly.
That can't be right.
That's a key point that Scotus makes, is that if common natures were just one single thing, we'd all just be one big blob of humanity.
Right.
So instead, he proposes this idea of what he calls less than numerical unity for common natures.
Okay, less than numerical unity.
I know. That sounds very jargony, so let's break it down.
Yeah, please, because I'm getting a headache just thinking about it.
Yeah.
What does less than numerical mean?
So think of a book with many copies.
Right.
Each copy has the same words, the same story, but they're clearly different physical objects, right?
Right, yeah.
Or a song that is performed by different artists.
Okay.
Same melody, different performances.
Okay, so it's like the content is the same.
Yeah.
But it's multiplied across different instances.
Just exactly.
So each of us is like a carrier of the common nature.
You're right.
But like a different carrier, not the same one.
You got it.
Okay.
But now, this is where Scotus gets really interesting.
Okay.
How do we bridge the gap between that shared common nature and each unique individual?
That is the question.
Right.
Yeah, what makes me, me, and not you, even though we share humanity?
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing this is where Haecceity comes in.
You bet.
Okay. So what is it like? Is it equality? Like maybe my Haecceity is like my sense of humor and yours is in being a philosophy whiz?
No, not quite.
Okay.
So it's not a quality like being tall or funny. It's what Scotus calls non-qualitative.
Okay.
So it's not what you are, but that you are.
Okay.
Think of it as pure thisness.
Thisness.
Yeah, the very essence of being that particular thing.
Okay, so it's not about my traits,
Right.
but something more fundamental.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Scotus argues that thisness, this Haecceity, has to be real.
Okay.
So if the common nature is real, so is the thing that makes it individual.
So it's not just a mental construct that we made up. If there's real humanity out there,
Right.
there has to be something that distinguishes each individual human. Yeah.
And this is where Scotus, I think, connects with but also diverges from a lot of modern thinkers.
Okay.
So for Scotus, Haecceity explains identity. It's the reason why this thing is this thing.
Okay.
But in many modern views, Haecceity is just taken as a basic fact, something that we can't explain further.
So for Scotus, it's not just that things are individuals.
Right.
There's a cause for their individuality. And that cause is Haecceity.
Okay. But like, why did he go to such lengths for this concept? Like, why even need Haecceity in the first place?
So he was incredibly thorough.
Okay.
He considered every other possible explanation for individuation and refuted them all.
Oh, wow. So he like went through every alternative.
He went through everything.
Yeah, and was like, nope.
Nope, this is the one.
Haecceity, this is it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what were some of the contenders?
So one of the contenders was that maybe it's our accidental features, like our experiences that make us unique.
Okay, yeah, because like our experiences shape us so much.
Right. But for Scotus, we exist before our experiences, so they can't be the foundation of our individuality.
Okay, so they shape us.
Right.
They build on something, but they don't create it.
Exactly.
Okay, what else?
Another idea was matter.
Okay.
Maybe it's just that we're all made up of different chunks of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the common sense view, right?
Right.
What's wrong with that?
So Scotus argued that matter persists even when a substance changes.
Okay.
So when wood burns, it becomes ash.
Uh-huh.
But the matter still exists.
Right.
So if matter can exist in different forms, it can't be what truly individualizes us.
Okay, so it's not the matter itself,
Right.
but something about how it's organized or like what form it takes.
Exactly.
Okay, is there anything else?
He even considered the idea that existence itself could be what individuates us.
Really?
But he rejects that as being too general.
Okay.
Everything exists,
Uh-huh.
but that doesn't tell us what exists or why it's distinct from other things.
Right, so existence is necessary but not enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we're convinced, Haecceity, this is the answer.
Right.
Doesn't that create a problem?
What's that?
Now we have two real things in one individual,
Yeah.
the common nature and the Haecceity.
Mm-hmm.
How do those fit together?
That does seem like a puzzle.
Yeah.
But to solve this, Scotus introduces the idea of a formal distinction.
Okay, a formal distinction. Bring this one down for me.
Yeah, so imagine the two sides of a coin.
Okay.
They're always together,
Uh-huh.
part of the same object, yet they are clearly distinct.
Right.
So the formal distinction is kind of like that.
Okay.
Not a real separation,
Mm-hmm.
but a distinction between two necessary aspects of the same thing.
So the common nature and the Haecceity are like two sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. Always together, but conceptually distinct.
Exactly.
Okay.
They are two fundamental, inseparable aspects of a single individual.
Okay.
But, and this is where it gets even more challenging, not everyone agreed with Scotus about the need for Haecceity.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so thinkers like William of Ockham rejected this view.
So they just thought things were different.
Pretty much, yeah.
Full stop. No need for Haecceity.
No need for Haecceity.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they argued that substances were just different on their own,
Okay.
without needing this extra layer of Haecceity.
So for them, there's no shared humanity.
Right,
Just individual humans that are fundamentally distinct.
you got it.
Hmm.
And this gets to like a core disagreement in philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
The debate between realism and nominalism,
Right.
whether the common nature is really in individuals
Okay.
or just a concept that we use to group them.
So for Scotus, humanity is a real thing that exists in all of us.
Yeah.
But for Occam, it's more like a label that we use for similar beings.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it gets even more complex when we start to think about how this applies to us as individuals.
I bet.
But I think we need to save that for next time.
All right, so listeners, we'll be back soon with part 2, where we will delve even deeper into Haecceity. But for now, think about this. If Occam is right, and things are just different, period, does that change how we view ourselves and the world around us? Welcome back. So last time we were wrestling with this really mind-bending concept of Haecceity, the thisness that makes each individual unique. And we kind of ended on this cliffhanger. Does Haecceity really exist, or are things just fundamentally different? End of story.
Right, and to really understand like what's at stake in this debate,
Yeah.
I think it helps to remember the kind of philosophical world that Scotus was working in. He was very deeply committed to realism.
Okay.
The idea that common natures have a real existence beyond our minds.
So for Scotus, humanity isn't just like a concept that we made up.
Right.
It's an actual entity
Exactly.
that's present in all of us.
And because he held this realist view, the problem of individuation becomes even more pressing.
Okay.
Because if we all share in this one humanity, what makes each of us distinct?
Right.
That's where Haecceity comes in.
So it's like Haecceity is the secret ingredient that transforms generic humanity into you, me, and everyone else.
That's a great way to put it.
But if you reject realism, like William of Ockham did, the whole problem looks totally different.
Absolutely. So for nominalists like Occam,
Okay.
who didn't buy into the reality of these shared natures, there's no need for Haecceity.
Okay.
There's no humanity to divide up in the first place.
Right.
They're just individual humans, each distinct from the other right from the get-go.
So it's like two totally different starting points. Yeah.
Lead to two totally different paths.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's stick with Scotus for a minute.
Okay.
He was adamant that Haecceity is real. What exactly did he mean by that?
So for Scotus, real means more than just existing in our minds.
Okay.
He believed that Haecceity had a real objective existence out there in the world, just like those common natures.
So it's not just a mental construct, it's like an actual ingredient of reality.
Exactly.
But we talked about how it's not a quality,
Right.
like height or hair color. It's non-qualitative.
Yeah.
So if we can't describe it in terms of qualities,
Mhm.
how do we even grasp what it is?
That's the tricky part. Even Scotus struggled to define Haecceity in positive terms.
Okay.
He mostly defines it by what it's not.
Okay.
So it's not the common nature, it's not our accidental features, it's not matter, it's not even existence itself.
It's like a philosophical black hole.
Yeah,
We know it's there because of its effects,
right.
but we can't directly observe it.
I love that analogy. I think that really captures it well.
Yeah.
But for Scotus, even though we can't grasp Haecceity directly, we can infer its existence through logic and reason.
Okay.
So if common natures are real,
Uh-huh.
and we know that individuals exist,
Right.
then something must be doing the individuating.
Yeah.
And that something, he says, is Haecceity.
So it's like a necessary piece of the puzzle
Mm-hmm.
to make the whole picture of reality fit together.
Exactly.
But, as we said, not everyone was convinced.
Right.
So what were some of Occam's main objections to this?
Occam was a really sharp critic of Scotus.
Okay.
And I think one of his biggest challenges was this idea of, if the common nature exists in all these different individuals,
Yeah.
how does it stay one thing?
Yeah, that's what's tripping me up.
Yay.
If we're all sharing in this one humanity,
Mm-hmm.
why doesn't it split into billions of pieces?
Right. Scotus tries to address this with his concept of formal distinction, which we
Right.
touched on earlier. So he argued that the common nature and the Haecceity are distinct,
Okay.
but they're inseparable aspects of each individual
Mhm.
united in this special way.
Okay.
But Occam wasn't buying it.
Really?
He famously said, "A distinction without a difference is no distinction at all."
Wow. So he was basically saying, look, if the common nature is truly one thing,
Right.
then it can't be fully present in multiple individuals at the same time.
Exactly.
Like he thought Scotus was trying to have his cake and eat it too.
Exactly. Occam thought that if you start with real things existing in the world,
Mm-hmm.
the common nature just can't be one of those things.
Right.
It has to be a mental construct,
Mhm.
something that our minds use to group similar individuals together.
So for Occam, humanity is just a convenient shorthand,
Yeah,
but not an actual entity out there in the world.
that's right.
And if that's the case, you don't need Haecceity to explain anything.
You don't need it.
Things are just individual, pure.
That's right. And this difference in their starting points, I think, highlights one of the big divides in philosophy,
Uh-huh.
the debate between realism and nominalism.
Right.
And this is a debate that has huge implications for how we understand the world language, even logic.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But all this abstract talk,
Yeah.
I'm a very concrete thinker.
Yeah.
Can we bring this down to earth with like a real world example?
Absolutely. Let's try this. Imagine you have two identical twins.
Oh, twins. That's always fascinating
Right.
when you're thinking about identity.
So they have the same DNA, they look incredibly alike,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even share a lot of personality traits.
Okay.
How would Scotus explain their individuality?
Right.
So for Scotus, the twins share the same common nature,
Okay.
humanity.
Mm-hmm.
But each twin also has a unique Haecceity.
Okay.
And that Haecceity is what makes one twin this twin and the other twin that twin.
Okay.
Now, we can't perceive these Haecceities directly, but they're there,
Yeah.
ensuring that each twin is distinct.
So even though their qualities are nearly identical,
Mm-hmm.
their Haecceities are completely different,
Yeah,
setting them apart as individuals.
precisely. So what makes them similar is the common nature, but what makes them unique is the Haecceity.
Right.
It's like each twin gets a unique thisness stamp at the moment that they come into being.
I see how that works.
Yeah.
What about Occam? How would he explain the twins' individuality without relying on Haecceity?
For Occam, there's no need for Haecceity.
Yeah.
The twins are simply two distinct individuals from the very beginning.
All right.
Their individuality is a basic fact,
Mm.
not something we need to explain with any shared natures or any extra principles.
So for Occam, each twin is like a self-contained package of individuality,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all there is to it.
Exactly. He keeps it simple.
Hmm.
No shared humanity to divide up just two individual humans,
Right.
unique in their own right. But this brings up another really fascinating question. If this Haecceity is real, does it stay the same over time? I mean, we change so much throughout our lives.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Right.
If it's this core essence of who we are, does it change as we grow and change, or are we always tethered to our past selves by this invisible thread of thisness?
That's a fantastic question, and it leads us to one of the most challenging and intriguing aspects of this whole debate,
Mm-hmm.
the relationship between Haecceity and personal identity.
All right, so we're back, and things are about to get seriously meta. Last time we were exploring this idea, Haecceity, unique fitness,
Right.
that supposedly sets each individual apart.
Yeah.
But if it's so fundamental, if
Yeah.
it's really the core of who we are,
Right.
how does that work when we change so much
Right.
throughout our lives?
Yeah. It's one of the biggest brain twisters in philosophy, right? If Haecceity is fixed from the moment we exist, how do we reconcile that with the fact that we clearly grow and change over time? Are we somehow tethered to our past selves by this invisible thread of thisness? Or do we get a new Haecceity every time we change in some fundamental way?
Whoa, that's a mind-boggling thought. It seems like a paradox. If Haecceity is unchanging, how can we change? But if we change, does that mean our Haecceity changes too? I'm getting dizzy just thinking about it.
You and me both. It's a very slippery concept. And to make it even more slippery, Scotus himself didn't really address this question directly. He was mostly focused on establishing Haecceity as the principle of individuation, like a snapshot in time.
Mm-hmm.
But his silence on how it relates to personal identity over time has led to a lot of debate.
So it's like he gave us this amazing philosophical tool,
Right.
but forgot to include the instructions for how to use it when
Mm.
things get really complex.
Kind of, but that ambiguity also makes it so fascinating, I think, because it forces us to grapple with this really fundamental question. What does it mean to be the same person over time? Given that our experiences, our beliefs, even our bodies are constantly changing.
That's a question that has kept philosophers up at night for ages. It's like that classic thought experiment about the ship of Theseus. If you replace every single part of a ship over time, is it still the same ship? And if you apply that to a person, are we still the same if our cells regenerate, our memories fade, our personalities shift?
Exactly. And the different views on individuation that we discussed earlier play a huge role here.
Uh-huh.
So if you're like Occam and you reject the whole idea of shared natures,
Okay.
you might say personal identity is just a matter of continuity.
Okay.
As long as there's a smooth enough transition from one state to the next,
Uh-huh.
it's the same person even if there are changes along the way.
So it's like a river. The water's always flowing.
Yeah.
But it's still the same river or a story.
Yeah.
The plot and characters might develop.
Right.
But it's still the same story.
Perfect analogies. But for someone like Scotus, who was committed to realism and the reality of Haecceity,
Right.
things get a little more complicated because
Yeah.
if Haecceity is this fixed, unchanging essence,
Yeah.
it seems to imply that there's a core unchanging self that persists throughout all those changes.
But wouldn't that mean that big changes would threaten our very identity? Like, if I have a major personality change or if I get amnesia and lose all my memories, am I literally not the same person anymore? That's a scary thought.
It is a bit unsettling, isn't it? And that's one of the big challenges of trying to make Haecceity work with the idea of personal identity over time. If it really is unchanging, even small changes could potentially break the chain of identity.
So are we stuck with this idea that personal identity is an illusion, this constantly shifting thing that can never truly hold its shape, that's kind of depressing?
Not necessarily. Some very clever philosophers have come up with ways to reconcile Haecceity with the reality of personal change. One idea is that maybe Haecceity isn't this rigid, static thing, but more of a dynamic principle. That means that it allows for growth and development, but within certain boundaries.
So maybe it's like a seed.
Yeah.
It contains the potential for a specific plant.
Right.
But how that plant actually turns out depends on the environment, the nutrients, all the experiences it has.
Mm-hmm.
It's not predetermined down to the last detail.
That's a great way to think about it. So Haecceity could be like the blueprint for our individuality,
Okay.
but not a blueprint that dictates every single detail. It allows for a whole range of possibilities within which we can grow and become who we are.
That's a much more hopeful view.
Mm-hmm.
It means we have the capacity to change and evolve.
Yeah.
We'll still remain in essentially ourselves.
Right. And this opens up all sorts of other fascinating philosophical questions.
I bet.
Questions about free will, moral responsibility, even what it means to have a self at all. If our Haecceities are dynamic, if they can respond to our choices and our experiences, does that mean we have a role in shaping our own destinies?
Whoa. That's a whole other can of worms we need to open. But I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We started with this seemingly simple question, what makes this thing this thing? And look where we ended up.
It's a testament to the power of philosophy, isn't it?
It sure is.
One question can lead us down so many unexpected paths.
So to all our listeners out there, we leave you with this thought. If Haecceity is real, does that change how you view yourself? Does it affect how you understand the world around you, all the seemingly ordinary things that now might have this hidden depth, this unique spark of thisness? Keep pondering, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.